Awesome. Well, here we are with Marguerite Rigoglioso. And I got nervous about saying your name all of a sudden, Marguerite. Marguerite has been an inspiration to me since I learned about the fact that it's very possible that women can divinely birth parthenogenesis. And I got obsessed with your two first academic tomes about this of the Greek goddesses and learning all the clues and codes. And then, Marguerite, now you're the founder of Seven Sisters Mystery School. And so you've been teaching all this wonderful priestess and goddess skills. And now all of this work has come into your work with Mother Mary in these two books. And we're going to be talking particularly about the second book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary. Um, and how, I mean, these books are based on that academic research, but have this much more accessibility now with the way you're writing and bringing in all the biblical connections, and yet also this channeled intuitive wisdom and how it can be applicable to our lives. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to this book. I loved these two Mary books. I just want to say to everyone, sorry, I'm rambling here, but I was on a train going from Toronto to my mother's small town in Canada, from Toronto to near Ottawa. And the train was 2 hours late, and I had the book to review on my computer, and 6 hours I spent with your book and taking my time digesting, and you had questions at the end of each chapter for you to think about. And I felt, you talking personally about your connection to Mother Mary, and then I felt her personalness, her sweetness. And I just wanted to start off by saying all that and thank you.
That's so wonderful. First of all, thank you for having me again, Michelle,
So
on
welcome.
your show. And I know we've spoken before a number of times, right? And it's wonderful to get that feedback, how this book is reaching people, what kind of response, how it's touching people, how it's offering transmissions. You put it out there and you never really know.
Right.
And then so when I hear comments like this and experiences like this, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It like helps return my energy back to me in a kind of a reciprocal flow. So thank you.
Oh, yes, so welcome. Yes, transmission is the right word. I felt a transmission. I felt emotional. I felt tears. I just felt like when you talked about that Mother Mary could remother you.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And I just felt very touched by that. Like, I think we could all use that.
Yeah. Because this is all about returning the Great Mother to us and returning to the Great Mother. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times that has to do with a very personal experience of what we did or didn't get from our mothers, what we did or didn't give to our daughters, that kind of thing, those of us who've had children. Um, and it's all about the return of the mother now, right? So the personal is spiritual, the spiritual is universal. It's happening on so many levels.
So when you say the return of the mother, can you say more about that?
The return of us to our relationship with Great Mother, with Mother Divine, with Goddess, Great Goddess in her many forms. And this, of course, is, as you well know through your work and your experiential teaching all these years, is the big missing piece. It's the big missing link for thousands of years now. We've had in so many of our traditions a disruption, a disconnection, a dismissal and disavowal of the sacred feminine nature of the divine. And that has caused so many problems for us personally, and certainly for our world collectively. And we're seeing the results of that now. And so this is a big reclamation project. This is about the resurrection not just of Jesus, but of the Great Mother, essentially. That's what we're in at this point.
Okay, that's very well, succinctly, fabulously said. Thank you for that. In your book, you were talking about, Kaleshwar's, Sri Kaleshwar's talking about Mother Divine, and I got a little confused as to, is Mother Divine the one that created us, or God and Mother Divine? I don't know if,
Right, right. Well, it's interesting, just to go into that briefly,
yeah.
in the teachings that Sri Kaleshwar offers, which, he called the Holy Womb Chakra system, there's a place in those teachings where he goes into the creation stories.
Mm,
In one, it's like Shakti, the feminine, is the creator. In one, it's Shiva. In one, it's, I don't know if it's Vishnu or whatever.
mm,
And when it starts looking like, oh, here he's talking about a female created universe. Here he's talking about a male created universe. But when you bore down into the meanings of these names, and you tease it apart, you realize that it's not really one or the other. It's all kind of a yin yang going
mm,
on together. And in a way, all of that is subsumed as a feminine, right? Under the feminine. So
mm.
it's you kind of go back and forth like in figure eight fashion about who created whom. Did the
Okay.
masculine create the feminine, or the feminine create the masculine? It is something of a mystery, but there's a lot of room in there. And ultimately, I come down to what the great, the hugging saint Amachi says. She says, well, God is neither masculine nor feminine, but if you have to pick one, it would be a little more feminine. Okay. So kind of that's the big thing, that the wool has been pulled over our eyes, because we've mostly grown up in a world in which if you have to pick one, God is a little more masculine. And then mainly beyond that, no, God is masculine, period.
Right.
So we're in a time in which we're just reversing out that spiral.
Yeah.
We're unraveling this tightly wound hiding, of our essential feminine nature of all creation. And we need that back. We need that back personally in our lives. We need it back in what's going on
Yeah.
the planet,
Yes. Yes.
every level of the hologram.
Right. Great. Good. This is really helpful. I like how you're talking about this. And so you also mentioned that maybe it's Sri Kroleshwar who said that Mother Mary was having conversations with Mother Divine about birthing Jesus.
That's right. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
When I her teachings with Cindy Lindsay, his senior teacher, back in 2017, and she talked about that, it was, and also he really writes about that in his book, The Real Life and Teachings of Jesus Christ. It's such a revelation, and it really makes sense. So you really understand, she was the orchestrator of the whole, what I call the Sophia Christos mission on the planet. She knew there were problems here on this earth plane. She wanted to do something about it. And at that time, when she was incarnated, she got the message from, Mother Divine, Great Mother. Well, my dear, right now, you can't do that reclamation project yourself. You can't do that big healing and clearing yourself, because you are the feminine, which means you are the fabric of this world. It would be almost doing violence to yourself to try to get into that role. You need the yang counterpart to help you do that. Now, Sri Kaleshwar said that since then, his feminine students shifted, and his feminine students have more been able to take on that role, which is more the Kali role, the great Shita, the slayer of the demons,
Mm,
essentially.
mm, mm.
But at the time, and for Mother Mary's energy, and because she was so close to Mother Divine, and she had her final incarnation, her final merging with Mother Divine, right?
Mm.
she didn't want to do that to harm herself. So the whole plan was, okay, I'm going to bring in an avatar, a male.
Mm,
He's going to handle this energy for us
mm,
right now.
mm.
And that is what happened. And that just makes total sense to me.
That is a really wonderful perspective. Like just hearing also that Mother Mary resurrected Jesus through her womb power.
Yes. That's another major thing that was so stunning when I learned about that from Sri Kaleshwar. Yes, he writes about that. It's in the Holy Womb Chakra teachings. He basically says that through the practices that she did, which largely involve these mantras that are available to all of us, that I've been teaching about and others have been teaching, the mantras and the use of other things like sacred symbols,
Mhm.
she was able to take the broken body of Jesus on her lap, like in the Pietà, Michelangelo's Pietà, right?
Mhm.
And start rolling this energy going. And Sri Kaleshwar, I talk about it in the book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, so people can get the details there.
Mhm.
But it's an energy that gets created that is working with him, who was also working these yogas while he was on the cross and basically in a way expiring from his body. And he literally is resurrected. Now, the implication with Sri Kaleshwar is that this actually happened bodily,
Mhm.
which in a way would correspond with the Islamic tradition,
Mm.
which implies that. And even I find in the Christian tradition, it's a little ambiguous. He's walking around, people are seeing him as apostles, and it's never fully 100% clear. Like, okay, is he walking in sandals, or what's going on? Is it just an apparition?
Right.
Leshwar says that he then went on to India, even with Mary Magdalene as his wife. So here's what I see is that there are like multiple timeline options.
Right.
There's a timeline option in which Jesus ascended energetically into the next plane. There's a timeline option in which he physically went to India and then presumably had more of a Mahasamadhi, natural death or whatever, when he decided to leave the earth plane. Um, Whatever the case may be, there's medicine for us in whatever resonates.
Mhm.
And some people are like, I don't really want to deal with that crucifixion story at all. I'm rewriting that darn thing. I'm going over here, and that's how creative of a time we are in right now, where we can co-create these spiritual realities according to what we need now for the medicine it gives us now. So I know you understand this. This is like a great mystery. It's not all pinned down. It's
Right.
not all black and white. It's not all 3D linear.
Right.
It's much deeper. And this is the Mother Mary that I am unveiling.
Beautiful. Yes. And I mean, it's not an easy thing to write about, but you do write about it pretty accessibly. Like this is multiple time realities is not that easy to understand, and this gray area and this whole like the way you talk about Mother Mary is going to be, however big you see her, is how big you will see yourself. I mean, I'd love for you to share this. This is a beautiful, beautiful, empowering concept.
Yeah, isn't that cool too? I mean, I found that in the Gospel of Philip, one of those, Gnostic gospels that didn't make it into the official canon, but is where all the good stuff is, essentially. So the Gospel of Philip has these two passages that I write about in the book. And the short story of it is that, as you're saying, there's a great mystery with these kinds of teachers, these beings, these netters, that what they're doing is meeting you where you are. So that's why we have all these views of Jesus as like kind of a smallish, sort of punitive, whatever, and Mother Mary as this passive virgin, da da da. And then we have these other views of them that are being revealed now. That's because we're individually and collectively growing up into that bigger view, because what you see is what you are. And what you are is what you see in that figure eight. So I give the precise quote
Mhm.
that again also has its medicine. So you and I here today are amplifying this view of Mother Mary so that we can all amplify within ourselves what is our essential inner Mother Mary, because they're here to help us awaken our angelic nature,
Mm.
not copy them, worship them. No,
Mm.
they're here for one purpose only, which is for us to awaken to our inner divinity, really know what that feels like and walk around like that and create a whole new earth experience with that.
Right. It's because it's needed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what she was trying to do back then, she's continuing to now do through all of us.
Absolutely right. These are the second and third and millionth comings, is each person having their personal awakening
Mm.
to the depths of this material and what this means for walking in your own life.
So empowering. So empowering. I'm sorry about any outdoor noise, by the way.
Oh, that's okay. Occasionally I'm hearing it, whatever. That's fine.
Okay, good. Um, I'm just gonna receive that. That's just it's so expanding,
Mhm. Yeah.
really beautiful. And I'm guessing that this is part of the program that you are offering. The Mary,
Yes, yes.
do you want to talk about that?
The Mary and Magdalene Priestess Training, which as of this filming is enrolling through August 28th, 2024, starts September 10th and will be a 6-month training ground where we are going to experience many of the layers of the mysteries that I'm bringing forth, unveiling some of them largely for the first time in, hundreds of years, if not more. And as they are associated with both Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene working together, so
Mm.
that we can become more confidently these living Marys, which is a priestess title, and these living Magdalenes, which is a priestess title, for our own personal healing, for our spiritual growth, and for whatever work we're doing out in the world. So, that's the little elevator speech of it. And we can go into that a little bit more, maybe as we go along, because each aspect of the training is based on something that I discovered and have written about in the book, essentially. Because
Wow.
I want this to be a living revelation for people, a living experience. I want everyone to know that we can step into this priestess stream once again. It has always been living. It's there. It will nourish us. And then, we can take this out to a whole new level.
I think that's what is so special about this book, is it's definitely the primer for this program. And it's like there's a transmission of this palpable connection to Mother Mary and our own ascension and potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't really understand, Michelle, when I was writing it, how the next steps and layers that were going to happen with it.
Ah,
But I'm realizing, well, I am a teacher, and so here's this material that I've brought forth. Again, how can I make it a living experience for people? How can I mine the historical for, again, that living energy,
right.
that living gold, so that we're not just looking with historical nostalgia at what once happened and only was a path open to a few people, but
Right.
we're understanding how they are teachers for all of us now, right? That is the critical thing.
Yes. So that's a great weaving. I feel like the weaving that you're doing, weaving of historical facts with, practical embodiment and application. Like that's high level weaving going on.
Thank you. And it's through this very process that I have understood the deeper levels of what is meant when you're told that Mary and some of these other virgins of the temple were weavers.
Right. I
Okay. They weren't just dealing with thread. All right. Physical objects.
right.
They were doing quantum weaving on so many different levels. First of all, to engender these divine avatars, and then to, bring all these streams together out in the world and get this great orchestration going, because these women weave together so many things that are going to be in the training that seemed to me disparate. Like, oh, why am I studying this now? Why am I studying that now? I felt like a pinball that was bouncing, And then it all started coming together as I realized, oh, Mother Mary is the Pleiades, is the fairies, is the Sophia dragons, is the unicorns, right? And we can talk about any one of those things,
Right.
but and what does that mean for us today, right? But it's so thrilling because it's uniting all dichotomies, all divisions and seemingly separate camps
Mm.
can be united in this stream of the Marys and the Magdalens. And that in and of itself is tremendously healing, let alone incredibly creative for people who can bring all these different pieces back into
Right.
this tapestry. And it is telling that some of the story is literally on tapestries that are in museums about the unicorn, okay, and her connection with the Marys.
Do you want to say anything about that right now? Anything more?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
because to me, this is the almost most live, interesting living edge for me, because as I go into this training, it's what I'm going to have to receive oracles on about the most.
mm,
But in my book, it's chapter 7. It's about Mary's connection with the subtle beings of nature.
mhm,
And one of them is the unicorn, that, of course, has become a thing of unreality, childlike fantasy, stuffed animals,
right.
Um, and what we're coming to discover is, like the fae, the fairies, like the dragons now, they've had a recent resurgence.
Mhm,
The unicorns are next in line for coming back into our consciousness as reality beings
mm,
that have spanned this third dimension and the fifth dimension and beyond. Okay, so what I'm starting to receive are further iterations of even what's in that chapter, which is laid out as describing what's in the unicorn tapestries in New York in the metropolitan cloisters,
mhm,
and the feminine ones that are in the Cluny Museum in Paris. That's where it really gets interesting, okay? Because what that is describing is an initiation sequence into the other realms of reality through the 6 senses. Okay. And that's where one of the places I'm going to take people in this training, through those initiations, through the 6 senses. That is a feminine mystery initiation, very much connected with the Marys, the virgins, so to speak, meaning the sovereign women,
mhm,
and the unicorns, who, guess what, at the timing of this, were almost upon the Lion's Gate. In those tapestries, there's on the one side the unicorn, on the other side the lion. They were known to be mortal enemies. And yet, under the beneficence of this process that goes on, of this feminine initiation, they are sitting peacefully with one another.
mm,
That's the kind of healing energy that we need in our world.
right. Absolutely.
The lion lies down with the unicorn.
Wow.
Okay.
When were those tapestries created, do we know?
Medieval times, like I think around the 1400s in Flemish regions. And
Mm.
uh, I offer a little bit of history in there. There are some books that have been written about them.
Mm.
So we don't really know how old and how deeply this mystery goes, but it even goes back to the illuminated manuscripts that I think are older even than that, maybe 1100s. You see unicorns in these manuscripts.
Ah.
You see them on some of the stained glass in the stained glass windows of some of the cathedrals.
Mhm. So, so you're saying the ones in New York are not as, were they made at the same time? Are they two different, they're two different sets of unicorn
They're
tapestry?
two different sets. They're two different sets. And there were clearly many more beyond that. And I think there might be pieces that are here and there, but these are the most complete sets
Aha.
of tapestries that go together because they're telling a story.
Right. Okay.
Okay. The ones in New York tell the horrible,
Of the killing of the
dark,
unicorn.
yes,
Right.
dark, terrifying story of the killing of the unicorn. There's a very great mystery with that. And what I started to realize is, oh, that was describing the last living unicorn in the third dimension.
Ah.
Rapture, because these creatures could span dimensions.
Right. Right. Like
And
the
they would,
fifth.
in fact, they would lead us into the other dimension, which is why these sacred parthenogenetic virgins would be connected and able to see them
Mm-hmm.
and could bring them forth into this dimension. So the virgins were tricked to lure them into this dimension so that the unicorn could be captured and killed and its body parts used for occult ritual purposes, sometimes healing,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, where okay, that's the New York set.
That's New York set.
Okay. Then the ones in Paris, though, are totally a feminine story. Amazing. There's
Wow.
beauty, and the Virgin is on the field of the fairies. Each one is this millefleur design, this thousand flower design, right? Which is
Uh-huh.
the home of the fairies. This is the fifth dimensional and beyond realm,
Right.
where all of this drama is taking place, where all of this beautiful awakening is taking place. So that's what we're going to drink of. One of the things we're going to drink of in this training.
I mean, did you, did you know when you were teaching about the Fae and the fairies that they were going to lead you to Mother Mary and the unicorns?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So when did you figure that out?
All righty. So, back in 2019, I was invited to teach at the Fairy Relations Congress in Scalitude, Washington. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I had already started receiving in Oracle states, and I'd been working with the fairies, receiving about the unification of the Marys and Jesus with the fairies. Like, how were they she beings? How were they fairy fae beings?
Hmm.
I said, well, let me pull all of this together that I'm receiving and create a talk. So it was pretty much Oracle information, was how I was receiving it. And I did this talk, and people were weeping because, again, it was the unification of things that had been torn asunder. Uh-huh.
Torn asunder.
Of things that had been torn asunder
Hmm.
that we never knew could be brought back together. And there's such a peace in that, reuniting the pagan world with the Christian world, which, the Christian world is the most pagan thing ever, right? When you really looked at early Catholicism and all that.
Mm.
And the pagan world carries the lineage of the Christos Sophia, the ancient Celtic, for example, or Druidic, if we're going to look at that. It's all carrying the same energy. So by consciously uniting them, talking about their mutual characteristics, we experience a healing, and we experience a merging of the energies of these worlds, which then fortifies us to be able to do the work for both of these sectors, right?
Right.
So that's what's happening here. Now, I did not know then it was going to lead me to dragons and unicorns. That has been developing.
Mhm.
as we've all been collectively awakening over the years. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wow, I'm getting the picture about the dragons now. Oh my God. They're getting, it's like they're not, there's interference, right?
There's
Um,
integrity.
and the latest thing again for me has been the unicorn realization, because you know me, and I think you as well, when we look at this material, this information, the scholarly information, the texts in terms of images and manuscripts and tapestries, we're like with our intellectual mind, but because we're oracles, we can then go into a meditation or a medicine ceremony and say, okay, let me look at this from that perspective, this open perspective, and wow, that's what's been happening for me.
So amazing, so inspiring,
Yeah.
because that there's the weaving again, like you're weaving
Exactly.
realities together,
Realities, weaving worlds,
dimensions,
dimensions. That's the main thing.
limitations. Yes, it's it's so expanding and brings so much magic,
Yeah. It
really
re-enchants our world.
re-enchants the world. Absolutely.
It re-enchants Christianity,
Mhm.
and it strengthens um, our understanding of the magical fairy realm. So
Absolutely.
both are strengthened by their unification.
Yes. I think that's what I'm getting, the magical quality of, you know, the trajectory, but culminating in this book so far is just bringing magic to things that didn't seem so magical
Yeah.
or ununderstandable, or magical but so far separate. It's so integrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And it is rather breathtaking to be part of this and to be present and available and cultivating these awakenings and these layers and levels. And it is quite a journey.
Yes, I mean, yes, how do you experience that? That just feels like a lot. Like, you're a brilliant mind to be able to do this, for one, like, but I mean, the impact of it is more than just a mental exercise.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I have to do a lot of self-care, essentially.
Good for you.
I have
I-
to do a lot of exercise. I have to do a lot of eating right. I have to do a lot of sleeping right. I have to do a lot of balancing. I have to do a lot of making sure I'm meditating. Um, I have to do a lot of making sure that I have something beside this, which is my singing. I sing. Um, and that I'm balancing things with my partner, and so it's a continual weave.
It's a lot of
And
weaving.
I don't know how people with children do it,
Right.
or how people with elders that they're having to take care of do it. People who have very demanding lives in that regard. But I guess, I have chosen this path of relative unencumberment in that regard,
Right.
um, to be able to be available for this. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, well, I haven't had like a totally normal human life, but I guess it had to be that way if I wanted to really be open to the ecstatic experience of this information.
I mean, in a way, you are divinely birthing.
Exactly. That's
That's,
exactly,
yeah,
you
because,
know,
yeah,
right? It didn't come through my physical womb, but it came through my energetic womb.
exactly.
All
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Um, you know, I'm going to go back to sort of also one of the most exciting things about this book, these two Mary books, is that Mary is a title.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is, that just, I don't know, that did something for me. That was like chilling. And I know you've said it before, but somehow because you go more deeply into it, I wonder if you'd like to share that realization, or how that was for you, or. how
Yes,
important that
that
is.
was one of the coolest things that I realized and received. And by the way, I know that in the show notes, you're going to have a direct link to the masterclass that I did about this. What is a Mary
Yes.
priestess? What is a Magdalene priestess?
Right.
And could this be a path for you? Because I just filmed that yesterday and I went through, Marguerite with her slides. There was a debate, slides, no slides. She chose slides, whatever.
I'm glad
But
she did.
I go through details and even
Yes.
more details than are in my books because, of course, I found a few other layers of this whole meaning of these titles. All right.
Yeah.
But basically, the short story is that when years ago, when I started researching into Mother Mary as a divine birth priestess, um, I read D.M. Murdoch's book called Christ in Egypt. And she has this section where she talks about the name Mary as originally going back all the way through when it was Mariam in the Aramaic and Miriam in the Hebrew, going back before that to when it was in the Egyptian as Mr, which was transliterated as Mary. Mary, which was a term that essentially meant divine love, the one who is loved,
Mhm.
the one who loves, and the one who is love. It was a sacred title that came to be most closely associated with Isis.
Mhm.
So she was known as Auset Mary, the divine beloved of, of Isis. And it was attached as a title and a sacred title to kings and queens and things like that. Not only in Egypt, but I just recently read this even spanned into the Roman Empire. I couldn't find evidence for that, but apparently they were like, we like this Mary name. It means connection with divine love, sacred, high level love. And so then the term Miriam came from that, Mariam, Maria, and then the anglicized Mary. So when you look at that, you realize that the term Mary is pregnant with all of these things. And that it's why we had so many Marys running around, not only the New Testament, but the Old Testament, okay? Or the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, to be more correct on that.
Mm.
And why Mother Mary had a sister who also came to be known as Mary. Like, why would a mother name the two children the same name? That is crazy. And so there's been all this textual tampering with things that show us that they were two different Marys, you know. And it also shines light on the mystery of how Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene have the same name.
Yes.
This wasn't just because, people liked the
The name.
name, Courtney or whatever, Brittany, like that's like the latest one. All right. It was Mary back then. It's because it came from this venerable divine stream of people and gods and was an honorific priestess title. So you weren't Mary, you were a Mary.
Right.
And therefore you realize, oh my gosh, if they were Marys, could I be a Mary? When does this begin? When does it end? Miriam of the Bible was a Mary. Okay. All these other Marys of the, Cleopas and Salome and da in the New Testament. So that's when I really started realizing, oh my gosh, this was talking about a priestess history and stream. And what is the deeper meaning of this? And what's the meaning today? So, all these things, these little shards get me going and they get my oracle state opening up so that I can draw in more information from the Akasha for what we need to do today. And that's why we've got this priestess training. It's all right. We're stepping into, we're incorporating that Mary title and all of its attributes into ourself. The Magdalene title has another set of meanings. And we're moving forward from here.
And that is interesting about Mary Magdalene, to be a Mary and a Magdalene. Yeah,
She's talk about a weave,
right.
like super, super high level. Because the Magdalene title, which people will see in that with a little more detail in that free masterclass,
Yes.
basically means exalted guardian watchtower of humanity. That was her nickname. But they wrapped it all in Magdalene, because to go around saying guardian female watchtower of humanity, it's too much. All right. By the time you get it out, everything. Okay, so but it's like this really fabulous new scholar. Okay, turning you all on you, Elizabeth Schrader
Schrader.
Polzer, Polczer. Elizabeth
Okay.
Schrader Polzer. Be on the lookout.
Okay.
It is fabulous podcast that she did with, I think, Diana Bass, Bass, about how Magdalene is not describing a woman who was from a location,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but this was a nickname for this particular woman that we know of as Magdalene, this particular Mary that we know of as Magdalene,
Mm-hmm.
just like Petra, Peter, was the nickname for Simon, who became known as Simon Peter, Simon the Rock,
Ah,
towards the first pope eventually. Petra, or its variations, originally meant the rock, the
yeah.
foundation on which different things are built. There was always a foundation stone to every house, and all this and that. So Magdalene was the tower, the watchtower guardian. Simon was the rock, right? Simon was the rock. And then we called him Peter, because that's what it means, rock. So we even forgot that he was even named Simon and just call him Peter.
So interesting. So these are,
All kinds of details that are readily available, but until you start poking into it, and then until you actually make this accessible to other people in like ordinary language,
yeah.
it's like we're blind,
Yep.
you know? And
It's
then you're like, what? Why didn't we know about this? Why weren't we taught about this? It's a miracle to me that it's even still in some texts.
yeah. You mean the real
These details, these
food
stories, that these texts actually exist.
exist, right? You know what also got me excited with this Mary title is, you know how I've researched and Hedwana, the
Yes.
Anne is a priestess title. It's an
Yeah.
Anne priestess.
An Anne priestess.
She's a
Exactly.
Mary priestess and priestess. And then Hedwana means ornament of the sky, which can be beloved of the sky god.
Yeah.
It can be, and so it had the beloved connection that you said.
Right.
Mary is, now is Mary beloved of the divine, or of somebody, or
It's everything
of
and.
everything? And yeah. So whereas
It's
Ed had
all three.
all three.
Lover, one who is love,
Right.
and love itself.
So that's much
Beloved and love.
bigger. And Hedwana was, I think, trying to tie her almost like the goddess Inanna was the beloved of An as well. I think that's what her name even means. So it's got this sort of patriarchal
Yes.
god.
Yes, yes. And we see that in Egypt too, that like Isis was considered the beloved of. Well, who would that be? Okay,
Yeah,
kind of Osiris, but you
right.
know, um, but there's something else going on, because you could also see that ornament of the sky as simply star being.
Right. Star being, exactly what you talked about. There's a star
Oh,
connection to Mary. Is that right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
These are all star beings,
Yeah.
as are we all, which we're starting to realize what actually that means.
Yeah. What would you say that means? Star being.
That means that she's a soul who has traversed many dimensional locations in the universe that we might identify as stars, star systems,
Mm.
Things like that. That's how we can simply understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And that she, like the seven sisters of the Pleiades, which she is related to, and we can talk
Right.
about that,
Yes.
they can come and go, even from any place, from the earth plane. William Henry talks about, well, they had the technology to phase in. And then what I added to what he said is, and they had the technology then to parthenogenetically give birth. And then they had the technology to say, sayonara, it's too tough down here. We're going back to the stars. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, by coming here and giving birth on the physical plane, they are leaving their stardust with us, AKA DNA.
Mm.
And that's how we know that we're from the stars and that we have DNA
Mm.
from these various visitations, some positive, some not so positive.
Okay.
See, that's this type of stuff that I'm starting to put all together. And that's we're putting together in this priestess training, because this is not even the be all and the end all. There's other layers and there's other aspects of this fractal that we're going to be going into. And who knows, 10, 20, 30 years from now, after Marguerite's made her Mahasamadhi, who knows what could be going on? All right, you could find her fingernails and her hair, the ashram, wherever. Okay. You know that Mother Mary did not even leave fingernails and hair, and that's in my book because she had a total and full ascension.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, because I have a whole chapter on her, quote unquote, the passage of her leaving her soul, leaving her body in that lifetime.
I didn't quite retain that detail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
that's
it's a little kind of thing that can just go flick.
yeah.
And then I had to actually look back in the book, like, oh dang, did I actually put that detail in the book? And then I was like, oh phew, it's in there. But these are things that you find in these apocryphal Gospel of Bartholomew, whatever it is. I mean, these 6 books, manuscripts, these various manuscripts about her.
Mhm.
They do exist. I mean, they are in various libraries, and they've made it into translation. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and um, were you associating Mary with the womb and Magdalene with the heart, or did you make some sort of connection like that in this master class? What or
Well, what
did
I say is that both of them are of the womb, the heart, and the eye,
okay.
the wisdom, the seeing.
Mhm.
That is the total Mary.
Got it. Yeah, because I know that there's that hero tradition of the heart and the womb connection, and also there, that Maureen talks about, and that there is a connection literally between the heart and the womb. And so this pineal, is that you were talking about the pineal?
Yeah.
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 So I mean, I think that's inherent in those traditions somehow, right?
Definitely. I mean, I really see that Karo tradition and the yantras that they drew, that Maureen has so beautifully drawn in her book, like The Good Darkness and other things she's been teaching. Maureen O'Brien, we're
Yeah.
referring to here.
Yeah.
It's all right there in diagrammatic form, how this triangle intersects with the heart and that womb triangle intersects with the heart. And oh my gosh, the heart is uniting the eye and the womb. And I just really see Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene as uniting all of those portals of the body.
Right. Yeah, and then when you talk about how, I love this section where you talk about how Anne, Mary's mother, is it Anne, did her ritual, her sacred marriage, her inner sacred marriage ritual to do the parthenogenesis, that she called upon Sarah,
That's right.
and that you revealed that there were these Hebrew matriarchs who have also been part of this lineage of divine birth priestesses.
Right.
um, and that so they were doing an internal marriage of the masculine and feminine. That's what
Right.
she was doing
I believe so. I absolutely, she was undergoing the inner bridal chamber. When I wrote the book, I didn't have those words, but that essentially was what it was. The woman had to become the original hermaphrodite back again. And I talk about what I've discovered, uh, even since writing these books, in the Gnostic sources, that humanity was originally hermaphroditic. Now that's in Plato. Rudolf Steiner says it, and then boom, there it was in these Nag Hammadi Gnostic Gospels. Whoa. I'm telling you, Michelle, it's all right there. Go get the Gnostic Bible by Willis Barnstone and Marvin Meyer. Read it all for yourself. Okay.
Right.
Humanity was originally a hermaphroditic form. We were united until these archonic forces at some stage of our at some stage of these visitations to Earth split us, and that was the Adam and Eve thing. That is the meaning of Eve coming out of Adam's rib. Basically, they both came out of each other. It
Whoa.
was this horrific, archonic splitting of humanity. And not only that, but then raping both the female and the male. These forces raped both of them. So deep in our history is this sexual splitting and then the raping. This has come down generation after generation. This energy has been put upon us and spiraled upon us because it gives food to these beings that instituted and got this stuff going. This is the kind of stuff that has been right there. And only this year have I started going, whoa, what is the secret gospel of what's the say about this? Whoa, oh my gosh. So what the virgin priestess has to do is engender the original hermaphrodite within herself in order to be able to conceive. So again, it's like those creation stories we were talking about at the beginning. While it sounds like, oh, just a female creation story, well, actually, she had to become both, and then she could
Right.
this conception.
Right. And that kind of seems like the yin and yang, where there's a little bit of yang on the yin, a little yin on the yang.
The yin and yang, it's the whole thing. It says it all.
Has it
It is
all?
the absolute yantra of all of creation, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's part of the process that we're involved in and that we are going to look at and experience in the training. I have started this with some of my classes. The bridal chamber, what is it? How do you go through it? And I'm realizing, oh, there's layers to the bridal chamber. You could do it one way this time and the other way this time, and then another way with another person, and right?
God,
But it's the prime Gnostic sacrament. It is listed in those Gnostic sources as that, because it's this inner unification or reawakening, that allows the Sophia light to shine within. That Sophia light, they couldn't take away those forces. It is still there, but they've done everything to put veils and obscure us and blind us from our own inner light. That is why the Christos Sophia family came, to help us awaken to that.
Wow.
And shine it with good purpose on the planet.
Right. So this is it's sort of bringing this connection to this energy healing practice, which is that I'm learning that, but just opening up the grand flow within and letting it out into the above and then coming out, and instead of letting energy get stuck inside the body and creating problems, and it based on an imbalance that we have in the body of the left and the right, the feminine and the masculine. And so it just seems like there's a real connection,
Right.
with bringing, and this man who I learned this from. He said something like, "Oh, everyone's talking about the feminine side, the left side being so fluid, and the right side being so rigid and masculine and not so good. And when they start letting this come through, all of a sudden, they like men again." Like, because this tension out between male and female starts within. There's some tension that started already within, perhaps with what you're talking about, the archonic thing, or I don't know. It's just fascinating. It's
Yes. And you're right to see the relationship, because all these things are basically unified, all these bodies of knowledge. They're all getting at the same thing. So, that man that you're learning from,
yeah.
getting at the same stream of information, maybe with a different angle, right?
Right. Exactly. It's fascinating. And it's so funny because when I was interested in Hedwana, researching Hedwana back like, oh, I don't even know how many years now, I was always like intrigued by the sacred marriage, and there was just
Yeah.
no clues, it's like, well, there were clues. No, there were some interesting clues, but now it's like what you seem to be bringing in is the sacred marriage within yourself and with others.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you're just saying male, female, you're saying male, male, female, female also can have their own sacred marriages.
That's right, because here's the interesting thing. In Plato, what we learn is that there were three types of original beings. One was male, female, one was male, male, and one was female, female.
Hmm.
And that when those splits happened, it created a longing for us to find the other part. And for some people, it's male, for some people, it's female. And it really depends on what your original monad was from. Okay. So that's a really interesting angle um for me on that.
Hmm.
But even like the XX chromosome, like there's still a level of duality that's having to be reconciled everywhere.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
It's not right that we're in duality, so there's a doubling. And so I think that's a great mystery for people who are interested in that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've been a little bit focused on the male
Right.
female thing. Yeah, I think the most effective external sacred tantric marriage is with two people who have gone through the Gnostic sacrament of the internal bridal chamber with success,
Within themselves.
fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Then you have these two divine angelics coming together, and then their children can certainly fertilize the land.
Right. And, or as you say, well, I guess when you're doing the sacred marriage within, you're like all the work that you're doing is your parthenogenic creation,
Exactly.
right?
So there's virgin birth to be had all over the place. You know,
yeah.
exactly. I've been realizing that, like you were saying with me earlier. And in some senses, all creativity is divine birth, right? It's parthenogenesis.
Yeah, it's this holistic within ourself coming out like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember back in the day with this whole idea of virgin being whole into herself, because I was virgin had such a bad rap because it was like, oh, only Mother Mary is like you have to be a virgin like Mother Mary to be pure and whole. And somehow she managed to have a kid, and
I know, though.
so confusing.
Fakakts, all
It's
right?
the fact completely. It was so mind fuck,
Yeah,
like
it is. It's very confusing because the essential um, meaning and sanity of it has been stripped from us because they don't want us to see it, because then we would be empowered.
exactly. Exactly, where sexual energy can be used in a good way
That's
and
right.
isn't a bad thing and isn't this virgin whore thing and all these. Yeah. Yeah. And because, my podcast is now called Sex, Lies, and Menopause, just wondered if you think that Mary was in menopause when she resurrected Jesus, or, I mean, do
Yeah,
we
well,
have any sense of how long
okay,
she
so
lived?
let's do the math.
Yeah.
Because if she gave birth to Jesus when she was 12,
You think she was 12? Okay.
okay, that's the youngest she could have
That's
been.
the youngest. Yeah.
If you add 33 onto that, she would have been what? 47.
7. 45, 45. Sorry.
Yeah, 45. Okay.
Right.
She could have still been fertile.
Yep.
And at the oldest, she would have been 16. So add a few years onto that, she still could have been fertile
Yeah.
at that time. Um, all right.
And how long did she live after? Like
Well, what I determine in the book, there are two math calculations that you could do. One is that she died kind of young, and one is that she lived on into her 80s or so. I go with that one because most of the evidence about what she was doing post resurrection suggests a long life.
And so for those of us who want to feel empowered in our menopause, it's like she was doing a lot of her work
That's right.
in menopause. Like she was a force, right?
Of course. I mean, she never lost her energy. And it's a mystery as to whether her mother Anne,
Right.
how old she was, because Anne went on to have that other Mary in the a different way, in a tantric way, supposedly with a partner.
Oh, and really?
Yeah. Okay, so
Oh, had the other Mary, the other sister. That's right.
sure. But what I recently have received, Michelle, is that, oh, that wasn't just any old willy-nilly, you know, nighttime date with Cleopas or whatever, whoever it ended up being. And they might have been engaging in a tantric union, whereas with Mother Mary, she was engaging in a parthenogenic inner union.
Right.
So that's a mystery right there. It's a mystery how old Sarah was
That's right.
when she gave birth to Isaac. But here's what I started realizing, and I think I had this in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, which is that these women may not have been menstruating at all
Right.
because of their purification diets.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
They didn't need to menstruate.
No, no,
So there
that's
was
right.
never menarche and there was never a menopause.
That's
There was
right.
one long life.
Exactly.
And, so it brings up, because what I was starting to study about when women go through these purifications, that they won't menstruate.
Yep.
Now, some people will say, well, they're in a very unhealthy or anorexic state or da da da, but no, not all of them.
No,
No.
and there's Kim Anami, who is a sex coach who was consciously stopped her period and through the Taoist practices.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You can do it right now. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, your menstruation. If you want to have a kid, turn it back on. If you don't, turn it off.
And Z Earthstar talks about that too. She has a Taoist, ancestry. So
And
again,
it's better for you to not be menstruating,
I
actually.
know, because no wonder it's so draining. I
Yeah.
mean, first of all, we are detoxing from whatever we've physically taken in.
Yep.
And don't we are detoxing from whatever we've emotionally taken in. And that's the main thing. And that's why people will get sad and depressed,
Right.
irritable and whatnot during
Yes.
a menstruation. It's
Yeah.
not, it all goes together because you're detoxing what you've taken in from your environment and the world. So we have women crippled by this process.
Right. And then there's, I think it was what's his name? The man who knows the woman who gave birth parthenogenetically.
Oh yeah, Den Poitras.
And Poitras, who knew about breatharianism and these raw vegan diets where the women were not menstruating anymore. And they were very healthy. And
Yeah, they were.
that's why I didn't want to call it Sex, Lies, and Menopause, because for some, menopause is really doesn't exist. It's not really a thing that we should be fixated on, but it's more of an age thing. And in our culture, it's a marker, but
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, it really makes you wonder, like, okay, if the menstruation can cease in a natural way early on, what's the role of the hormones then? Because the hormones, once that estrogen stops being produced, oh my gosh, that's when we really feel, see, and sense the aging process.
right.
So, what would it be like? I mean, I think this is like the eternal life thing, that these people could be youthful for quite some time.
Right.
And here we are stuck with wrinkles and whatnot, having creams and all of that. So it's just, this is just making me think, okay, what is this fountain of youth?
And you know what? I think that being connected to your sexual energy is part of it. I mean, and
Okay.
connected to the grand flow. I really do think
Yeah,
that is a piece of it. And maybe Mary was doing it differently. There are higher level versions of that,
I think so.
right? But it's definitely going to help us, and
Yeah,
we're getting the message at this age to not that we don't have any interest in this anymore, and that it's like, oh, game over, don't even think about sex, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, I think that's a psyop. That's not healthy to think that way necessarily. And then there are women who are getting inspired by their work, and I'm sure they're getting inspiration
right.
that way, but um you
Yeah.
know,
I think you're onto something, and that this is a great mystery that needs to be explored much further.
I think so.
And I really bless Christiane Northrup, who
Yes.
and she has her whole Amata Life company,
Oh,
provides herbal
Arbol.
herbal hormonal remedy from Thailand, this Pararia mirifica
Okay.
plant, you know.
Right. I need to look
So,
into that. You've
oh
been
yeah, look into it for sure.
okay. Okay.
Amata Life, Mata, Amata. Um, and Pararia mirifica, she has like a gel, she has a pill,
Mm,
and oh yeah, you can reconstruct your whole vagina through that gel.
that's amazing. And I know what I love that she says is that, if you look at the data, women in their 60s and 70s are having the best sex of their lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it's something that gets better if you are willing to, keep doing your
Exactly. And this brings in
part,
whole Montauk Chia. Uh,
right?
he's got a whole untapped, largely set of teachings about this,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
it takes practice like everything else,
It takes
right?
practice like everything else. And so what the reality is also is that only 50% of women over 50 are having sex. That's the current reality, unfortunately. But if they
Yeah.
knew that in their 60s and 70s they could be having the best sex of their lives, they might change their mind, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, I'd want to go back to Mary and just say that Mary was like alive and thriving in her later years,
Yeah.
if she lived that long. But and Mary Magdalene, do we know how was she?
We don't.
Yeah.
There are several timelines for Mary Magdalene, and one is that she spent the last, quote, 30 years of her life in the caves of Santabom and so forth,
Right,
doing her ascension practices,
right.
right? Five
Yes.
times a day or 7 times a day. There's another life timeline. Sri Kaleshwar offers that she went to India and had further children with Jesus. There's Claire Hartsong offers another timeline. And then there's a timeline in which she was martyred in Rome as a younger woman. So, and then there's another timeline in which she went to France. Okay, well, that was the one I talked about earlier. She went to Saint-Bon. Okay.
Right.
So there are at least 3 or 4 potential timelines with Mary Magdalene. And I just say pick the one that resonates for you.
Exactly. I was just going to say this is back to, there's multiple options and yeah. and and it just feels like, I mean, where do we, I mean, the people who wrote these gospels that you've been using to research that weren't part of the official Bible, right? Like those people must have been impacted by Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene's continuing of the work of spreading it. So whether they lived long or not, their that purity of those teachings continued that way. Is that, would you say that was correct?
I think so, yeah. I think there were writers who were close to them at the time who started writing these things down. And then from there, and through the oral stories, there were others who wrote them down in the first, 200 years after. Um, and there was an oral and a written tradition that went on. And so some of the biographies that I accessed surprised me. I was like, oh, I never knew there were like two or more biographies of Mother Mary and this and that. And some of them were based on material I recognized from her infancy gospel, originally known as Birth of Mary, now known as the infancy gospel of James, who is the James who wrote, all these things.
Uh-huh.
But there were others that I came upon. The Gospel of Bartholomew, I think I mentioned, and others that are not coming to mind currently.
Right.
But some of these might have been based on texts that are now lost to us, that were not saved in these purges. We don't really know the full scope of this.
Right, right. But it seems like they are part of this sort of underground lineage that sort of has continued to the point of today. I don't know if there are other things that will emerge that are more like the unicorn tapestries in France, are part of this. There were people who continued to carry this version of Christianity.
That's right. That mystery going right into these tapestries.
Like
So,
that you decode them that way. You know what I mean? Like that.
oh my gosh. Well, I was building on one of the authors. I don't know if it's Barbara somebody. I'm forgetting who the author is. She or somebody had determined that these tapestries were all about a woman going through the six senses. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me, but why? For what reason? And then I realized, oh my gosh, each of these senses was an opening to the other dimensions. He was using something to open through the sound, through something she was tasting, through something she was seeing, all this. And so that I just received this downpour about what was going on.
And see, that to me, because it's sense oriented, that's pleasure.
Exactly. It's in the body.
Exactly.
It's not about transcending your body.
Exactly.
It's about using your body as the organ for accessing the other dimension, as the doorway.
Yes.
That's what I love about that. And that's what we're going to be exploring in the Marian Magdalene Priestess training in part of it. All right. How is each sense a doorway?
Woof.
And the senses are so connected with the fairies, which are the realm of pleasure. So you see all these layers of mystery.
Yeah.
That are, we're unwrapping present after present.
Yeah, I love that.
Like you unwrap one present and oh my gosh, another present is in there. Oh, and then you unwrap that. It's like the endless present that you're opening. That's kind of how I feel.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful, Marguerite. Thank you so much. Is there anything is there anything you'd like to say more about the program, or do you feel complete, or I'm just
I feel complete. I think people can just look at the links under the show notes that
Okay.
you're
I will be
provide.
providing. Yeah.
A lot of it is explained on there. You can access the free call where I explain further. You can just go to sevensistersmysteryschool.com, spelled out SEVEN,
Mhm.
sisters plural. And it's all going to be right there on our homepage. And yeah, I just encourage anybody who's feeling the spark, the curiosity, to sign up for that master class, to look at that page, see, is this going to fill your well? Are you feeling called? Is this creating a longing in you or satisfying a longing in you? And if so, join us ideally by August 28th, 2024.
And they can have a conversation with you also if they have questions.
And yes, if they have questions, if you have a question, you don't really know, you just need to connect with me before you make this decision. Yes, I have ongoingly complimentary half hours that you can access in the registration page link near the tuition button. It'll say if you need a session with me, if you've read this page but you still have questions, or you just need to feel me, sign up, and those will be ongoing through August 28th. Okay.
Great. There's some time. That's wonderful. Yay. Okay. Well, this has been wonderful, Marguerite. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you're doing about, raising our awareness about sex lies and menopause as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe one day we can have like me channeling Mother Mary as a guest on sex lies.
Oh,
No.
wow.
I do that. I can't say I'm not channeling them directly.
Yeah.
It's more that I go into my Oracle space and I access, their stream of information, and which I do a lot on my YouTube channel, Marguerite Rigoglioso, and my Bridging Dimensions show. In fact, I have one coming up August 23rd where I'm going to be in my Lady Cannabis Oracle state, and we're going to be looking at Mother Mary's ascension and what are the codes for our own. What does this mean? What are the guideposts for all of us making this ascension within our life, and then when we leave our bodies as well, because so much was written about her passage in this regard.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
love getting into all this stuff, like working with Lady Cannabis in a completely honorable ceremonial way, because that's where so much information that I didn't cognitively know comes in.
using your team, your resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. Wonderful.
Sister,
Thank you.
lots of love to you.